Back in the tube. Okay, got about 27 minutes until I have to meet this guy. And I just wanted to inaugurate, I guess, some new phase of vlogging. Such a lofty term. I was driving here and having all kinds of ideas about what to say. I guess first of all, I have a desire to in some sense, confess my sins, or to, in Augustinian fashion, give some record of myself. There have been moments in the past couple months where I've just felt like the immediacy of death more so than any other time in my life. Maybe that's just a part of getting older. Maybe it's part of being a parent. Maybe it's part of the sort of highs and lows that I either subject myself to or are subjected to by God or fate or whatever. But I've very, I don't know, I guess when my nerves have gotten frayed, I much prefer that old school terminology than to the alphabet soup of modern diagnosi I could attach to myself. But at those moments, just feeling like, what a shame. But at the same time, feeling that as some kind of impetus to do something or say something. On a more topical note, as a kind of aside, I've been listening to this radio show by David Gorkowski, I think that's his name, Polish name. I'll try to provide a link if I can remember. He's this guy, this Girardian guy who has interviewed some pretty high-profile people, including Slavoj Žižek and Moldbug and Jean Orglian, whatever his name is, the collaborator of Girard on the book Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. So it was a rich vein for me to strike, because it was checking a lot of my boxes, things I've been interested in, or something kind of curious about the modern era, whatever you call it, the present moment, historical moment, is that connections are being made between people that would have seemed preposterous before. The whole notion of the whole idea of Joe Rogan hosting the presidential debate, for instance. Things like that. Indicative of a kind of collapse of hierarchical relations. Everything sort of coalescing. Perhaps, in Flannery O'Connor's words, everything that rises must converge. But my own personal reflections, my own desire to confess there are things I could just spit out that would be immediately kind of juicy, but I'm gonna play coy, not just for the sake of it, but, well, perhaps because I'm ashamed of certain things, but also because I don't want to just make things juicy for the sake of being juicy. Nothing all that juicy, but you know, there are certain bullet points I could hit. Maybe I'll hit them, but if I do, I'd like to do so like a French restaurateur who's searching for ingredients in the middle of a crisis. His head chef is sick, and the bellboys are all playing hooky. My mind is sort of swirling with various Francophile associations right now because I've been reading Marcel Proust. I've also been recording myself reading it with the thought of uploading, which I intend to do. Not simply because I think my own scruffy rendition of it will be, the bee's knees, the bee's elbows, the bee's knuckle sandwich, but the bumblebee's earlobes, but because it makes me enjoy reading it more, to do it out loud, to make it more performative in that way. I could always read to myself, I could always say what I'm saying right now to myself, but I enjoy the reality that sharing with another human being gives to the act. It's fun, and by my calculations, I can get through Swan's Way in about a month if I do 15 pages a day, which amounts to 30 minutes at 2 pages, at 1 minute per 2 minutes, or 1 page every 2 minutes. But that's only here or there because there's been some back and forth with Paul Talk about matters artistique, and I think I've grown a little bit of a thicker skin when it comes to criticism recently, if I may be so bold. So I don't think I'm offended or anything by anything Paul has said. I guess what would a quick summary of it amount to? That I've shared various poems and stories I've written at moments, at variegated moments, searching for a routine, a more rigorous routine to write. The guy I'm meeting with in T-minus 19 minutes now is a Catholic author. I don't have any particular interest in entering into the world of Catholic bibliophilia, but my social circle is thus that he's a connection somewhat easy and hopefully advantageous to make. I wonder if that's him. He's written a lot of books. I haven't looked too deeply, but some of them seem to be pretty well researched historical accounts. The latest one he wrote was on sorry, I know this is a tangent, but it was on how sinners, maybe it plays in. It's on. You can look him up if you want. I don't want to blow up his spot or anything with my huge following, but his name is MikeAquilina.com. You can sound that one out. About how sinners shape God's plan. So like Nero and throughout the Bible, really, God uses sinful and wicked men to shape his master plan. Much like a I hate to use the five-dimensional chess player. I hate to drag Trump like everybody does, into everything. People have suggested, that Trump's making a chess move right now with his getting COVID. It's all a swirling, whirling mess out there, I firmly believe. Where was I going? Let's land this tilty whirl. Let's bring this tilty whirl down for a landing. Is that him? I feel like a private dick. What was I saying? Okay, I'm gonna pause this video and find out what I was saying. Okay, I don't know how that could have slipped my mind. I mean, what's slipping my mind is the obvious and central point, which is Paul talk and his black-pilling statements, but also his statements about literature, or the criticism of my critiquing my penchant for the surreal or the esoteric or something, trying to disabuse me of certain modernist notions of unconscious creative process, originality, so on. Which is all fine. I'm trying to gauge the clock now. I'll do 15 more minutes, maybe. Sound right? Yeah. I don't know why I'm asking you. And I guess all that really comes to my mind in response, because it's a question of Jack Vance. I've tried to pick up Jack Vance. I've only been successful in reading short stories of Jack Vance. And what I said to Paul was that I recognize the skill of Vance, and it's very well written, very beautifully written. My problem with Vance is a little bit like my problem with Cormac McCarthy, who Harold Bloom recommends throatily. I don't know why I pay so much attention to Harold Bloom, other than that I have a friend who's Bloom obsessed, constantly sending me videos and quotes and things. Harold Bloom, the late Yale critic, Shakespeare worshipper. Cormac McCarthy, reader, worshipper. I guess the similarity between Cormac McCarthy and Vance is that they both paint these sort of epics. To use a painting analogy, it's a little like the difference between a sort of one of these epic scenes that Paul likes to paint, or that Titian or these people like to paint, with horseback riders and rolling hills and waterfalls and people prancing. Their bodies are always doing like this, something. And they're all sort of swirling and whirling together. The difference between that and maybe like a portrait with a single subject, the countenance, the eyes. I mean, my favorite art, really, I guess, is Matisse and his nudes. The single subject, a beautiful subject, somewhat sad, solemn, beautiful setting, but above all, a single subject, a single locus of beauty, of interest. And I find that I just, when I'm reading literature, I can't get absorbed into a book unless it has a compelling central narrator or central subject, central protagonist, right? Someone with whom to identify or to not identify, but someone who's the ups and downs of whose life create the emotional swells of the book. It's the reason why I like Houellebecq, despite his grotesque or nihilistic tendencies. And I think, as he said in one of his books, in Submission, that visual art can always can put you into a different mood, can give you a different way of seeing the world, can be marvelous in many ways. But what literature possesses above and beyond that is the ability, is quite simply, Houellebecq puts it much more beautifully and succinctly, but it's quite simply the ability to put you in contact with another human soul. Be that soul flawed or misled but to have that kind of, it's like a pseudo friendship. I mean, when you really get into a nice book, it's like you become friends with the person. You suffer alongside them. You feel afterwards like you know them. And great writing is, according to this view, is writing that invites that kind of friendship, that allows for that kind of friendship. Writing that is vulnerable to that degree, that the author bears his heart, his mind, his whatever. And I know, so the countercharge against this is some kind of romanticism. But I don't, and I can see all the all the ridiculous clowny foibles of modern art and modern poetry, and I don't know, people drawing Chinese characters in menstrual blood or whatever the flying foul they're doing. I can see the folly of that, but at the same time, even in the folly, that's up. And I think this is the kind of the primary difference between myself and a guy like Paul Rhodes Scholar, is Justice Rhodes Scalia. I'm sorry, I'm just punning in my head now. I get in these bad punning funks. Right? It's like OCD or something. Jigsaw puzzling my way through things. The main difference between myself and Paul is I find all that, I find even the really self-indulgent stuff, I find somehow endearing. I do. I'll admit it. I'll admit it. On some level, I like it. I just like the humanity of it. I like the vulnerability of it. Even when it's like really bad. I always say when subject of poetry comes up, or people ask me why I like poetry or how I got into poetry or what that even means to me, I always say that I enjoy bad poetry, and I do. I just like... Sometimes I laugh at it or think it's stupid, but I appreciate the effort. I just like that someone put the effort into it, even if it sucks. I don't know. I just find it touching. At bottom, I just find it touching that people bother to do it at all. I don't know. That's me at my most charitable, but that's kind of the nugget at play. Terrible phrase. My wife said a truly ugly phrase the other day. She said, I bought butter at Target. Did I hear you correctly? Bought butter at Target. What a horrible phrase. Horrible sentence. But my ability to like notice things like that, or my interest, or the fact that I notice things like that, I guess that same part of me likes whatever. Anyway, that's not the entirety of the point. That's part of it, though. Part of it is having a certain kind of indulgence for the self-indulgent. I don't know exactly where that comes from. But I feel that. And I also feel the connection with a Houellebecq or a Proust or a Dostoevsky. I mean, Dostoevsky's writing is more kaleidoscopic, but more sweeping. But he always has those Russian characters. Apparently Dostoevsky grew up. His father treated like mentally ill people who are basically vagabondish in one form or another. The kind of people you see holding cardboard signs with hard luck stories, missing teeth, missing bones, scratches, scars, tales to tell. And as a child, apparently, Dostoevsky would hang out with these people and listen to their stories. As a young boy. And in large part, it seems like that formed him as a writer. That sympathy, that deep sympathy with the downcast, which isn't exactly the same thing I'm describing, but nevertheless, a kind of quality shines through in Dostoevsky's writing. His concern for people and his love for people. His concern for the afflicted. What's the old adage? The old adage caravan. To afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. Some saying of wherever that came from, Upton Sinclair, somebody. But great art, great comedy, great. Not so much art, not so much paintings like that. But anyway, I suppose that's kind of enough for now. I'm going to talk to this guy momentarily, and I'm supposed to talk about my writing, and he might give me some kind of editing gigs. I don't even know. I'm relying on the fact that he's apparently a generous and charitable soul. He's been on the EWTN network, so he must have an in with the big man upstairs. You know what I'm talking about. The G-O-D. The triple. That's how I affectionately refer to the Trinity. You know, the triple. So he also Whoa! I thought I'd just add a little bit more to this video because I had a nice hour and a half long conversation with this dude, who I think I already mentioned has published tons of Catholic books, the Catholic sphere of influence. And I pitched him on an idea for a book, and he said that there was no doubt in his mind that it would sell. So I'm excited about it. And we basically drew up a plan for me to write this book. I guess all you need to pitch to publishers is the back cover copy, an outline, and the first chapter. And then you can get an advance. And the idea is juicy and topical and provocative. The idea is gambling. I'm going to write about gambling from a number of different perspectives, each perspective constituting a chapter in the book. Gambling and addiction, gambling and fraud, gambling and sociology, gambling and there are others. The list goes on. But the provocative statement is that I predict that online gambling will be to the next two decades what internet pornography was to the 2 decades that preceded us. That's the provocative statement. Then you write an introductory chapter with colorful stories. Anyway, there's a lot of fireworks one can bring out. So that was encouraging because I had this idea. And this is related to everything else I'm talking about in this video. I'll have to flesh it out more later, maybe. But shortly after getting laid off, in part due to, the tantalizing attraction of easy money, although the unabridged edition of the story is longer, I became fascinated with gambling. I've started devouring documentaries on it and thinking about it, reading about it. The place of gamblers in Dante's Inferno, the relationship between local parishes and church bingo nights. He gave me in another topic, somewhat spookier, but apropos, given the month of October, is gambling and occultic influences. He gave me the contact information for this guy named Adam Bly, spelled not like Sly and the Family Stone as I first thought, but B-L-I-A or A-I, like that movie by Stanley Kubrick or Steven Spielberg stole. Sorry, just had to get that out there. B-L-A-I. Who is some kind of expert on exorcism, and who lives in Pittsburgh. best chance we have it. So, I'm feeling rather optimistic about this. I'm going to a dinner at the Warwick House in a week's time, which is this big Opus Dei mansion in Pittsburgh. I've been there before. Every time I've gone there, I've always been bowled over by the mise en scène. It's really it's a beautiful old mansion. You have to go through past a do not enter sign to get in. Anyway, I'm going to be hobnobbing Pittsburgh Catholic elite. Maybe I'll have something to show for myself by the time next Monday rolls around. Here's to hoping. Anyway, I'm going to go to this coworker space now and upload this video. Paste it together. See what anybody thinks. More on the way, I think. Not sure at what pace yet. A lot of that will depend on what kind of feedback or response this gets, if any. If any. Okay. Later.